I think I'm a bit of a maths geek, but nothing compared to our next guest, Mike James, who is a tennis analyst. Lovely to see you there, Mike. Welcome to the Wimbledon channel. I know that you have been involved in this for a very long time. Can you just explain when you started and how much things have changed in the data analyst, the strategy world since you started?
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's great to be here. Yeah, so I was actually a tour coach for several years, but moved into data and technology because for me, that was always my passion. And also for me, I could see the game was going down that route. In tennis, we've always been behind with data and strategy and numbers compared to team sports. So I really do think we're on the wave now of using data, technology and video with professional players.
Mike, is this one of the things that players now, just in the same way that they would have a coach and a physical trainer and a doctor or something like that in their backroom team, is this become an essential part of a tennis player's arsenal?
Well, it's great that I'm being compared to a doctor, so I like that one. Absolutely. I think if you look at the top 100 now, you've got at least 50% of the top 100 who are using data and analytics. Now, obviously, that varies depending on the player's budget and how they value where they see having that information. So for me, I've been fortunate enough since November 2020 to be working fully with Piotr Szczepanowski and Iga Świątek's team. And I've got to say, it's been a great journey so far. And the way they're using me is for me the best way. And this is how tennis will go in the future for sure.
Can you explain what that is? With Iga Świątek, and we know that she has lots of different people with her. She's talked about the psychologist side of her backroom staff that help her with, I think, particularly looking at if you win something, not just if you lose something, which is a much more positive way of looking at these things that I think some people do. For your side, what information does Iga Świątek, a French Open champion, what does she need from you?
Great question. So really there's two areas that I'm working in. Opponent scouting, so trying to find the weaknesses where you can exploit. And that is obviously, with Grand Slams, with the money in the game, the prestige on the line, scouting is very, very important. But actually with Iga's team, the vision for Piotr was actually to look at her game development and actually use my data and analytics to work on the practice court after tournaments and for the off season. So if you think about Iga, she's born 2001, which makes me feel very old. So she's just 20 years old. Her peak will not be for 3 or 4 years yet. So they're using a lot of my analytics. In fact, I've got a meeting with Piotr this evening to go over the Wimbledon review before they go into the Olympics.
And Mike, how are these statistics and the analysis, how is it delivered to the player? Is it sort of a printed package that you send before a match that they will look through and then, know what to do, perhaps in the match, where to serve or where the opponent's strengths and weaknesses are? Or are you giving it to the coach who then condenses it down and delivers it to the player?
Absolutely. I think for me, the best way to work is through the coach, because the coach is traveling with the player 24/7. They know the player better than anyone else. And actually, with the information I'm presenting, it's quite sensitive because it shows the positives of the player, but also the weaknesses. So if I don't know the player or the character, I can actually be quite destructive in that situation. So I work through the coaches. I'm currently working with Pat Cash and his player Wang. I'm working with the Kazakhstan Federation, but it's always through the coaches, and that's the key part of it.
I'm going to test you a little bit here, Mike, because sometimes in sport we hear, the cliche, keep it simple, don't think about it too much, don't overcomplicate it. Is this potentially, in some players' minds, overcomplicating it? You said about 50% of the players are doing this, but some of them clearly aren't and enjoying success too. Is this something that doesn't necessarily always work for everyone?
Again, these are great questions, and I think basically it does depend on the player. So actually, if I got my big break with my first big player 3 years ago, it was with Stan Wawrinka, but it was through Magnus Norman. So Magnus Norman hired me. He was interested in how I worked and how I delivered things. Stan wasn't interested in data sheets and dashboards, but what he was interested in was the video. So I would prepare maybe between 1 minute and 3 minute of video highlights that effectively would show up what the data is showing. And I think that's actually really, really important to tailor-make my role with the character. But like you say, it's not everyone's got a sports psychologist either.
Can I ask you a bit more specifically, kind of to what Adam was just asking about? If you're telling a player this person serves 80% of the time at 15-40 to this corner of the box, how much information can they take in and how much do they remember during a match? Because those are the crucial points when actually your mind might go a bit blank and you're just going with natural instinct, aren't you?
Absolutely, you're totally right. And I think for me, what I tend to find out when I'm scouting players is players when they're most uncomfortable go to what they're most comfortable doing. So that's where we see patterns and trends. So using that information, telling my player base that I'm working with, the important thing is, like I say to the coaches, look, this is the information, it's fairly heavy. They're not going to remember everything like you said. So give 2 or 3 key messages that you feel will be the difference today between winning and losing this match.
It must be tremendously satisfying when you've given a player the advice, the coach has analysed what you said, given it to the player, and then you watch the match and they're doing all of the things you've suggested that they should do and it works and they're winning.
And the opponent's doing exactly what you told them they would do.
It's almost like they're walking into a trap, I'm sure. What's it like when you watch the matches afterwards? You've almost given the players the secret to win.
Well, it's exactly that. It's a great feeling. Often it's mainly on the TV like every other fan, so it's not that exciting, but I do like to be at the events. I've been at Wimbledon during this period, not in the bubble, but receiving guest tickets from players. But absolutely right, it's the biggest feeling, and obviously I'm then happy that I keep my job for a little bit longer, knowing that the things are happening on the court that I said that were happening.
Do they react to you and say that you have helped them win a match and they keep that information in their heads and it helps them during a match? What kind of response do you get from the players? I know you've worked with people like Stan Wawrinka as well as Iga Świątek.
Absolutely. I mean, with Stan, I did a decent amount of scouting in 2019, scouted Tsitsipas, Dimitrov, Djokovic, Rafa. I think Rafa was the only match that we didn't get that I was scouting, but Rafa's Rafa, okay? So... Stan's matchup against him is always going to be tough. So, yeah, I think it's, like I say, I think what's interesting with analytics is that the next generation of players, you look at the quarterfinalists in the men's game at the moment, you've got Aliassime, born 2002, I think maybe, Shapovalov, 99. So the next generation of players have grew up with social media, have grew up with technology. So I think it's only going to become more and more in the player's mindset to utilise this technology.
And if I presume you're freelance, what happens if you have Karen Khachanov and Denis Shapovalov's teams both coming to you and asking you for advice when they're playing each other? What do you do then?
Yeah, so this has happened in the past, and if I'm honest, I mean, it tends to get out on the tour that who I'm working with. So the reality is we present to both teams and say, look, we can either give you, none of the information, or we can give you both of the information. What we definitely don't do is give one person the information and then we don't give it to the other person. That wouldn't be fair, would it? So it really is up to them. It's only happened once so far. I won't tell you who it was, but and we gave the information to both teams and prepared as normal. And obviously the trust comes in that we're going to do the best job for both teams.
I really want to know what happened in that one.
You've got some trade secrets, haven't you, Mike? And you didn't say we send it out to the highest bidder. Whoever gives the most money gets the tips. Mike, it's been really, really interesting to talk to you. Good luck for the rest of the tournament and the rest of the year, really, on tour. Really, really interesting to speak to you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
The Wimbledon channel. Let's head inside.